Hello everyone, welcome to a weekend project involving the greenhouse. Now you might have seen in a previous video of mine where I made a heater controller. This little beauty right here. It's got a temperature sensor and an STC 1000 temperature controller, which has the ability to turn on and off a load based on temperature inputs, minimum and maximum. In this case I've got it two small 150 watt heaters connected to it, and the box turns the heaters on when it gets below say 18 degrees, and it'll turn the heaters off when the internal space in here reaches 20 degrees. You can set a so-called hysteresis, which is a value where if the actual temperature deviates from your minimum and maximum set temperatures, then that's when it turns the heater on. And it also has the ability to activate a so-called chiller or cooler function. So at the moment I've only got the heaters connected, but I want to add functionality whereby when the greenhouse gets the sun on it and I'm not actually home, I want to be able to open the door automatically when the temperature gets above a certain threshold, and then in the evening when it chills down again, it'll automatically close the door and turn the heaters on. That's the ultimate goal. So we're going to add some functionality to this control box here by adding another output, and that's going to be a simple 12 volt DC gear motor and some limit switches. The motor is going to have to reverse direction depending on the output state of the STC controller, and all I've got to play with in there is 12 volts. So I need to have a 12 volt constant supply coming out. That's to drive the motor, and the only other option I've got as far as output is another 12 volt signal, which will be either on or off. When the STC decides that it's too hot in here, it'll activate that output, that'll become on. I'm going to use that to drive a relay. The relay turns the motor on. The motor runs off the constant 12 volt supply. The motor will open the door, the lid I should say. When it reaches a certain level, it'll hit a limit switch, which switches the motor off. And then when the controller decides it's now too cold in here, it will turn the 12 volt output off. That off signal will cause the door to close, and we'll achieve that with a relay. I've got a 4-pin panel mount socket to add to the existing heater box. I've got its mating cable mounted plug, and this is the cable I'm going to use. That's so that I can leave all this attached to the greenhouse and still take the heater box out for other uses. I'd just like to be able to use it somewhere other than the greenhouse, which means I need to be able to disconnect all this. So 4-pin plug and socket. I've got a multi-core cable here, some cable glands, 2 limit switches. I've got a double pole double throw relay with a 12 volt coil. I've got the mating cradle socket, but I'm going to try and use this enclosure, which means this can't fit, which is no big deal. I don't actually need this. I can just solder the wires directly to this and hot glue that in there like that. It won't matter. And the star of the show is going to be this 12 volt DC geared motor. I've got the enclosure with a seal because I want to make some attempt to make this somewhat waterproof, moisture proof. It would just be handy if I can keep moisture away from the relay. And I'm going to be wiring all this up according to this diagram. Excuse the napkin level of schematic here, but basically this is our double pole double throw relay. This is the constant 12 volt supply. This is the switch 12 volt supply. When that turns on, this will run the motor in one direction. The motor will activate a limit switch the limit switch will deactivate the motor. When this output goes low, back to off, then this will come back the other way and reverse the polarity of the motor. So then the motor will run in the opposite direction, closing the lid until it hits the other limit switch, which will then turn off the motor. Now you might remember in a previous video I actually detailed sort of some instructions on how to make one of these. This whole thing runs off of 12 volts. I used a transformer because back then that's what I had lying around. I'm going to keep it because it's working, and I've got a rectifier and a capacitor to somewhat smooth the output of the transformer, and so I need to now add this 4-pin socket somewhere into this enclosure, and I will give it a constant 12 volt supply on 2 pins, and the other 2 pins will have the switched 12 volt supply coming from this guy right here. So this is how we're looking, like an absolute rat's nest in here. But because I don't have anything like a terminal strip other than the one that's in the back of the STC, so I'm having to daisy chain things together to get the constant 12 volt supply out to the connector, and I tapped into the negative or the 0 volt, whatever you call it, at over here in that relay socket, and there's just a single wire that's the switched 12 volt output, and so now we've got a hole marked out and drilled and a 4-pin plug, so we just bolt that in, put all this back together, and then we can start working on that bit. Right, well there's that wiring loom soldered onto the relay with the heat shrink. Because this is a 6-core cable, I only need 4 cores, so I've doubled up 2 of them. I've figured out the rough length I need. They'll go in there like that, and I've got heaps of spare cable to do the switches and out to the motor. And that's what that looks like. That wiring there, just the inputs and outputs of the relay, 6 terminals. I'm just going to mock it up with the switches in the motor and just do a proof of concept thing, make sure it actually is behaving like I expect it to, and then we can get on with making the brackets to hard mount all this stuff into the greenhouse. Right, so here we are, all plugged in. I'm holding this limit switch at the moment to stop the motor from running. This limit switch would be the lower limit, so which means the lid is closed. If I let that go, the motor runs, and that's going in a counterclockwise direction. So the motor's now running to close the lid because the temperature is below 20 degrees. So this limit switch means the lid is closed. Now when that gets to 17.5 degrees, the heaters should come on. There they go. The heaters are on, the temperature's climbing in the greenhouse. When it reaches 20 degrees, the heaters will turn off, like that. And now, when the temperature in the greenhouse reaches 22.5 degrees, the motor should spin in the opposite direction until it hits the other limit switch. There they go. Now the motor is spinning in a clockwise direction to open the door. Now once the lid starts moving, this limit switch that I'm holding will become open. When the lid opens to the point where it reaches the upper limit, this switch will become activated and the motor turns off. Right, we're into the dirty part now, making a metal bracket. I've just made my own classic cardboard template for the motor. For what it's worth, these mounting holes, the distances and everything are just up the creek. There's no round numbers. It's 37mm one way, 48.5mm the other way. It's just awful, but I've done my best to lay it out as good as I can. So I've also got to have a couple of bends in it, something like that. So I'm going to hacksaw on the bend lines, one that way, one underneath, and then that'll make it easier to bend. And then I might just, because I can, just weld up the corners again to put the strength back in it. As I was saying, all the holes were in awful numbers to line up, so you don't know how hard it is to line up 5 holes in a pattern like that, marking out with the ruler and the scribe and the centre punch and the drill wandering and the soft aluminium. But the 3mm screws, I only had to drill 4mm holes to get all the holes to actually line up and bolt down flat. So I've just got one more fold to do to bring that up and cut those screws down. And just like that, we've got a parallel bracket. I've just been sitting that down on there like that and tweaking those angles around until it's all square and parallel. Really, I just want the shaft of the motor to be perpendicular to the mechanism and parallel with the lid of the greenhouse. So there you go. They're not pretty, but I'll just file them all down because that might actually cause a bit of an issue, the lumpiness with the mounting of the motor. Yeah, certainly strong enough now. Voila. Got the M3 screws in there. Those are M4 spring washers, but for this application it's perfectly fine. I cut those long screws down to 9mm of thread length, and yeah, it's going to go something like that. I just texture mark some holes in here, get some self-tapping wood screws, and job's a good one. There you have it. One motor mounted, and yes, I used the tri-wing screws because I'm cool like that. Just kidding. Believe it or not, they're the only wood screws I had that were just the right length and diameter and everything like that. I used 4 of them because this timber is unbelievably soft and mushy, so I wanted it to be as strong as possible, and that's pretty solid. So just for brevity, I think I'm going to forego the rack and pinion idea, just because I've got another idea that might just mean I get this project done this weekend instead of waiting another week for the rack and pinion. I think I'm just going to find or make something that can slip over there with a grub screw or set screw to go on the flat of the shaft to grab that, then have a little con rod just with a hole in the end and just bring it up to here somewhere. Because there's not much depth of wood here on this plane, this face, I'm going to add a little bracket, punch 2 little tiny screws in there with a bracket that comes down so I can put a pin in there, that's act as a pivot, so a con rod there, pivot up there, pivot down there. This motor turns, con rod's going to swing the door up like that, and I think that'll work. That'll be good enough. Now, I don't expect this greenhouse to live forever or even very long at all, because it's just so cheap and crappy. I kind of only bought it because I had the idea of making it motorized with this upper lid, so when this one bites the dust, I'm probably going to make my own version of this, but much more robust and long-lived, and I can easily take all my electronics and mechanical bits and add it to the new and improved, stronger greenhouse whenever this one bites the dust, that is. So it's not sunk cost spending all this time and effort making this greenhouse automated. And just while we're here, you can check on the seedlings. I've got a couple of rosella breaking ground and some bunching onions popping up here. Only since this morning, they weren't like that this morning when I came out, and the rest of it's all doing pretty good. So on with the con rod, and this is where we're up to. The next step, it's very janky looking because I don't have a lathe or a milling machine or anything like that. This is 100% done with hacksaw, hand file, cordless drill. So I just made a little collar out of the only round bar I own, drilled a threaded cross bolt in it to grab onto the flat of the shaft. Completely the wrong bolt. I really need a grub screw or something for that. And because that round bar was steel, I made this next part out of steel, so if I ever want to, I can weld those two together. Lots of different holes for adjustment. I went with the 2-arm design like that because, I don't know, I think it was just for packaging reasons, it'll just go better. And I'm just making now the part that goes onto the lid, something like that. And we should be able to bolt it all up and do a quick test run shortly. I could probably get it to open further if I repositioned this top bracket somewhere, but I don't think it needs to be any more open than this. It's just to stop the plants overheating when the sun comes out. I've just been using a 9-volt battery. It's a bit awkward, but there you go. It's pretty satisfying. So I can get it open again. There we go. And that's it. Now just got to factor in the limit switches into this equation somehow. I can probably just put the one to close it, to hold it closed on here somewhere so that the lid actually touches it when the lid comes down. The upper limit is going to be a bit more tricky. Maybe I'll attach it to this bracket and have a long bolt threaded through this that activates it somehow. Don't know. But whatever I do, I'd like to make them at least a little bit adjustable so I can just fine tune. Nothing crashes into anything else. I'd like to just have it open and closed to about there. Anyway, let's do that next. Well, that took long enough. There it is. I had to make an adjustable stop for the upper limit switch. The lower limit switch is just there. And I can get a little demonstration. Bingo. There it is. I can't tell you how frustrating it was to get this set up. I had the limit switches the wrong way around for a while, and then I didn't know that timer was active, so I couldn't work out why it wasn't going up, and it's just never ending, but it's working now. So I didn't end up making a bracket for that box. It's just too late in the day, running out of daylight. It's Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. I just wanted this to work, and then it started raining, of course, when I was trying to set this up. And anyway, well, it's been 7 whole days since I installed this, and it's been working flawlessly. I didn't make a bracket for that little box in the end. I just used some double-sided tape to hold it there because it's just a relay in a box, really. It doesn't need to be too fancy. The limit switches have been perfect, and I've come home from work and the thing's been open, and then 2 minutes later it closes itself. That's when it gets below 20 degrees. So 21.2 at the moment. It's not going to close for a little bit yet. The sun still got some strength in it, and the plants are loving it. I've got the tomatoes especially have come on a long way since last week, and everything else is just loving it. I've got really good success rate germinating the Rosella. 6 out of 8 seeds, which is pretty phenomenal for Rosella. And yeah, it's just been working great. So I'm time to load up with seed trays. I think I've got lots of seeds to plant this year, more than any other year. So I'm looking forward to that. Simple and effective, good weekend project. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.